Hey everybody, good evening. Hope you all are doing well. It's great to see y'all back after a great Thanksgiving. We hope you all had a great week so far. And this week, we are going to just dive right in, and we are going to talk resume. And your resume is really a part of the one of the most essential pieces to the job interview and getting hired, right? It shows the employer bits and pieces of your work history, what your skill sets are, what you've been up to, and it's not a whole picture, right? We want to make sure that we say that your resume isn't the whole picture of you, but it's the first step to getting noticed, and it's the first step to getting your foot in the door. So this week, we are going to explore the purpose of a resume. We are going to identify the best practices for writing an effective resume, discover the type of resumes that suits your needs and the position that you are applying for, and learn the formula for building bold bullets. And also, don't forget that you can reach out to us and chat with us throughout the week. All you have to do is just request an appointment, and we'll follow up. Last week, we were able to chat with a few of y'all to talk resume and career building and career exploration. And so, we want to let y'all know that we are always a resource for you. All right. And so, we are going to start off with a poll question. So the question of the week is, what are employers most responsive to on a resume? A, list of details. B, action-based statements. C, skills versus job history. D, exact dates. So what do you think an employer is most responsive to on your resume? So you're going to go ahead, click one of the options. Which one you think is the correct answer? All right, so we are looking at the majority of folks said skills, 20% said job history, and 13% said dates of employment and education. And those definitely are all very important, right? Because we think skills, you want to show off the skills that you have, that you're working on, or that you've built on your resume. You want to make sure that you show your job history, right? And dates of employment, so that a potential job seeker doesn't show that there have been maybe some long gaps in between jobs. But it actually turns out that the best answer here is action-based statements. However, it is important to do your research and know what the employer is looking for. For example, most government applications want you to have close to exact dates listed on your resume. And so action statements are actually designed to help the writer really appear more confident and hardworking, and also show the writer is self motivated. You have a plan for your life and you're willing to work for it. Many people choose to write their action statements using a writing style in which the directive begins with an action verb. Like, so for example, organize a study group, wake up early to study. By writing your action statements following this method, you are emphasizing the exact action that you are taking and demonstrating your strengths and skills through the chosen action verbs. So this method is more direct and will allow your actions to stand out more. And now we're going to move on to some resume best practices with Janardi.
I feel like a news anchor. Passing it over to Ted, passing it over to
Yeah.
Hector.
And
Thanks,
more
Hector.
at 11.
More at 11. It's really interesting to see the poll and see the results. I thought a lot of people would choose the action-based statements. But people really, nobody's wrong, as you said, Hector. A lot of people chose skills, they chose job history, and all that is important. And I feel like when you're thinking about the resume, you're thinking about a document that showcases your skills and your job history. But how do you do that and make it effective? So let's take a look at some best practices to figure that out. So the thing with the resume is that it's really subjective. You're going to have your own opinion about it. Every single person that you show it to is going to have their own opinion about it, whether you're showing it to your best friend, to a family member, whether you're showing it to a professional resume writer, they're going to have an opinion on it. So how do you know what's right and what's wrong? Here is an example of what I would describe an ineffective resume. And I want to throw the question to all of you. You've probably worked on your own resumes, you've probably seen friends' resumes, family members' resumes. What do you think about this specific resume? What are some of the issues that jump out to you when you're looking at this? And feel free to type your response in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourselves and tell me what you see. But as I'm looking at this resume, I'm thinking, this isn't really highly effective. And I want to see what your opinions are about it. What do you think?
I don't like how for like the experience list, I don't like how some letters are capitalized. Like Aldo's all capitalized. Dunkin' Donuts only has the D and D. I think it should include all capital in Aldo.
Good observation, Marisol. One of the key things with a resume is that you want to be consistent. If this person wanted to use caps to emphasize something, then they should do that consistently. It should be for every single employment. It shouldn't just be for Aldo. So it throws off the resume. Some comments in the chat. Somebody says that it's overwhelming. Okay, I can see that. And that probably has to do with the way that it's organized. Another person says that it's not easy to read or skim through. Absolutely. There's some issues with the formatting. Anything else from anyone? Anything that jumps out to you that seems problematic here?
Where it says additional experience, it only says customer service skills. I mean, so they should add details to that too.
100%. If you are going to list additional experiences, then you have to have some detail to it. Unless you're doing quick bullets, you're doing maybe a chart that shows some of your skills, that's fine, but it doesn't really illustrate what the experience is. Okay, customer service skills, what does that entail? It's very broad, it's very vague. And this is your marketing tool. I think Hector kind of alluded to that. You really want it to market you well, therefore the more details, the better. But there's a way to do that and make it seem not overwhelming, as somebody mentioned, but organized. And William says it's hard to read. Yep, too much of an essay. I like that. I like that a lot, William, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that as well. So let's actually look at some of the problems that I found. One of the first problems that I see here, and just one more. So if you're looking at the top here, you're seeing that there is a weird indent. And I think someone had mentioned, William, you had mentioned that it reads too much like an essay. It's fine to have this at the top, the summary of qualifications, but it shouldn't really be like an essay where you would have like this indentation, you're trying to make an emphasis to show that you're starting a new paragraph. The resume is not, it's not a letter, it's not an essay, you don't need to have that. And so the strange indentation actually throws off what I would say the alignment of the resume. It makes it very difficult to read. The next thing here, right below it, you see that there is a box around the term objective. How many people have seen that on a resume? Just thumbs up or raise your hand. Have you ever seen that term, objective? Yep. That's very common. It's been around for quite some time now. A lot of people use the word objective, but you're going to start to see that that actually goes out the door. You don't want to have the term objective on your resume. For one, it's outdated, as I mentioned. But secondly, so if we read this person's objective, it says seeking sales position and customer service. Challenge, and be challenged. Not much detail. And I think someone had mentioned, okay, they said additional experience is customer service. What does that mean? There's no detail there, very vague. The objective is pretty much saying what you're looking for, But the employer already knows what you're looking for because you're applying for a specific job or you're sending an email regarding a specific job. So you don't need to have an objective. What you really want to do is have what they started with, the summary of qualification. They should have left it at that. It might need some cleaning, the summary of qualifications, but they didn't need the additional objective. The summary of qualifications, rather, will speak to what you can offer. Again, you're thinking about marketing yourself with the resume. It's your marketing piece, it's your marketing tool. You're not really telling them what you're looking for. That's not important to them. They want to know what you can offer them. And so start with a strong summary of qualifications and just get rid of that objective. And then the next issue that I see here, I think someone had mentioned this about the dates. They were saying that you can't really see them. They're not very clear. And the reason being, in that same vein of it reading like an essay, the dates kind of merge into the text, which makes it really difficult for the reader to find this person's employment history. And that's a big issue when it comes to, for example, most resumes, when you're applying for a job, they go through a system. They go through an applicant tracking system. And that system needs to pull out your dates. It needs to see, okay, this person worked at Dunkin' Donuts. How long did they work at Dunkin' Donuts? From what year to what year, month, year, so on and so forth. And the system is not as smart as a human. We want to think that they're all smarter than us, but they're really not. And it can't really decipher what those dates are if it merges in with the text. So that's a big no-no. You want to have the dates to the employment very clear and off to the side. And you see that throughout the document. Additionally, I have a marker around the experience, an additional marker to the right around the experience, because I don't know if anybody noticed this, and I don't think anybody mentioned it, there aren't any bullets here. Someone had mentioned that it's not easy to read and it seems overwhelming. And one of the reasons why is because there are no bullets. Bullets actually help us to read information on a resume. Again, if it was an essay, that would be different. We have paragraphs, we can indent, and that helps us in reading it. But for the resume, where it might be one page, it might be a page and a half, we really just want quick statements. We want it to be succinct. And the bullets help us to guide our eyes to see what's important, what this person is trying to list out. But in this example of a resume, everything's just blended together. The employment, where they worked, is blended together. Their job title is blended in there. The dates are blended in there. There are no bullets, and it just makes it very overwhelming and difficult to read. And then if you keep going down, so there's that Aldo's position, there's a date right at the bottom, if everybody can see that, at the bottom of their paragraph, and it reads September 2017 to present. Now, if you're looking at the Dunkin' Donuts position at the very top of their experience, it reads, if you can see the dates, again, very hard to see, it reads August 2013 to June 2015. So there's a problem with that order. You want to have the resume in chronological format. So with your most recent experience, starting from your most recent experience to your oldest experience. And so this person should have this reverse. It seems like Aldo was their most recent experience. They're still presently doing that. That should be on top. And the reason being is because, again, it's your marketing tool. You want to speak to relevant skills, and your most relevant skills is from your most recent experience. So Aldo should be on top, and Dunkin' Donuts should be the last position listed on there. And then another thing, for me, the biggest issue with this resume is probably the dates. And you can see I have boxes around all these dates. Under the education and certification, if you can all see that, I have a box around September 2009 to June 2013 in St. Lamas. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's not really an issue. What's the problem here? Typically, for most American resumes, and I say American because it might be difficult, it might be different rather, if it is a European resume or if it's from another country, they might have different standards and different requirements. But for the average American resume, you don't actually have to list dates for education. And sometimes listing dates for education can actually work against you. And that's something that we won't dive in too much right now, but if you want to have a conversation about that, we can dive a little bit deeper. What I would say is if your education is recent, again, thinking about skills that are relevant, If your education is recent, you can always move that information to the top under your summary and say you just recently completed a bachelor's program, you just recently received an associate's degree, you just recently completed high school, and you want to market that, you can have it on top, and you can even have the dates there. But if it was years ago that you completed a degree or you completed your diploma, remove the dates from the education. You don't have to have it there. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of that I just mentioned? All right, so let's take a look at an effective resume. All right, so really quick, same exercise. You guys could probably visibly see the difference. What are some of the changes here, real quick? And again, you can put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
The dates are on the side.
Yep. You can clearly see the dates this time.
They use more bullet points.
They have bullet points this time. William Jones says alignment. Yes. That's a big deal to me. I don't know why. It's a pet peeve. Again, the resume is very subjective and everybody has an opinion about it. And there are some best practices. The alignment, if that throws off the reader, well, you're just not interested in reading it. The employer is no longer interested in reading it. Formatting, it's organized, easier to read. Anything else that pops up? I think you guys got majority of it. So I'll kind of walk you through the top. So here you see that this person, plenty of detail. Yep. They have a clean summary of qualifications. They got rid of that objective that was there previously. This is the same person, same resume, but it looks completely different. They have a stronger summary of qualifications. I didn't read the last summary of qualifications from the last resume, but if you were to read it, you would see that there are some key terms that they were hitting. That summary of qualifications, it's not meant to be like a cover letter. And we'll talk a little bit about the cover letter. It's not the main focus, but we'll talk about that as well. It's just a snippet of what you want the employer to know right off the bat once they see your resume. So it really has to hit key skills that are coming from the job description, but also your accomplishments that you want to relay to the employer. Now you can see I have the sales lead manager bolded. In the older resume, if we were to go back and look at that, we didn't really see their job titles. We didn't see this individual's job titles. We saw that they worked at Aldo, but we didn't see what their position was. So now we can see that they were a sales lead manager. And very quickly, if I wanted to, I could see, because the titles are bolded, I can see that this person had upward mobility. They had progression within their career. I can see that they started as a cashier at Dunkin' Donuts. They moved on to be a jewelry consultant at Zales. And now they've moved up to be a sales lead manager with Aldo. And I know somebody had mentioned the caps with Aldo. That's still there. The person might have an argument for that. I don't know if I were to Google Aldo, if that's how they like to have their name spelled out in all caps, but there can be an argument for that, for why they kept it all caps. But that was a key detail to see that it was inconsistent, that was actually capitalized and the rest weren't. And I believe, Marisol, you had mentioned about the dates being, was it Marisol that mentioned that? Mentioned that the dates are to the right. That's very clear as well. And you can see, so this person has it listed year to present or year to year. In the older resume format, they had month to year. This isn't necessarily a wrong or right, but doing it year to year allows it to be a cleaner format. And I think one of the things that people were saying was that the other resume was really overwhelming, was hard to read. And sometimes when you have the month and year format, it makes it very lengthy and it just kind of ends up blending into the text of your document, making it very difficult to read. So my preference tends to be year to year, but there's an argument for making it month to year as well, which again, very subjective. It's based off of your need, whatever your need is. And then very quickly, if you move all the way down to the bottom, you can see that the dates have been removed for the education. And again, if this person needed to have education, say the employer was requesting dates for education, then they could leave that in there. Okay. How do we feel about this resume compared to the first one? Thumbs up, are we liking this one? Yeah, cleaner format, definitely a cleaner format. All right, so let's move on.
All right, so we're gonna list some do nots here for your resume. Some of the stuff is gonna be what Gennardi's just mentioned in these examples. I think, if you have any do nots that we haven't mentioned so far, please just put them in the chat and we can go over them as we go along. We'll also go over some best practices, but here is a list just to help you out. So you do not want to start with an objective, as Gennardi mentioned. Including an objective can make it feel a little bit like you're strictly looking for, just career advancement or something like that. You want to show why you'll be valuable, not why you want the job. So that's why you don't really want to put an objective in. Again, as you can see in the last examples, when you blend dates into the experience, it's pretty hard to read through. That was one of the main reasons people had trouble reading it. So you want to make sure those are clearly stated off to the side. And obviously you want it in chronological format, and it makes sense from an employer perspective to do that with your newest at the top. At the top of your resume, you want to include your most recent position. And bullet points, as we said earlier, no paragraph forms, no random line indentations, just some final formatting things. Again, no extra white space or listing dates of education. And now we'll move on to some of the best practices. So again, if you feel any haven't been included in this list so far, please feel free to put them in and we can talk about them a little bit. But so you want to start with a professional summary. So that is a description of who you are as a professional, the skills you've had, the jobs you've had, why that makes you a good fit for the position you're applying for, why you'd be a valuable person for that company to hire. And so the bullets can really help making sure that you get your points across and your job duties and descriptions across cleanly and clearly. Bold in a clean format is always very useful. The dates clearly off to the side, as we said earlier, that just makes it easier to read, easier to run through. Sometimes organizations will have resume reader systems that they'll put it through, and there's certain format things that a computer system might not be able to understand. So if you keep the dates off to the side, that can sort of help you get through that resume reader function. And again, adding accomplishments and numbers that indicate successful performance. So that's the good place to put that is in the skills section or the section at the bottom. And then starting statements with action verbs, it really just helps to get that point across clearly, again, as we stated earlier. Oh, now we'll get to some cover letter stuff.
All right, thanks, Ted and Gennardi. So let's chat a little bit about the cover letter. So a cover letter is not our main focus for tonight, but we want you to know how important it is as a piece of your professional marketing portfolio is to have a really good cover letter. The resume and the cover letter really go hand in hand. We want you to know that the cover letter is your opener and the resume closes the deal. So even if you're sending out an attachment of your cover letter and resume, you want to include your cover letter first, so that that's the first document that they download, and your resume the second piece of your marketing portfolio that they download. So let's chat a little bit about some tips of your cover letter. You want to be creative. This is the perfect opportunity to show a piece of your professional and personal blending in together. What is the type of journey that you've been on? What have you learned? What are some of the challenges that you faced that will make you the best candidate for this position? Keep it short and concise. You definitely do not want to have a cover letter longer than a page. You want to make sure that it's concise and straight to the point. Include an intro, a core, and a conclusion. So much like writing an essay, you want to have your introductory paragraph that talks about you and what you're interested in and why you're interested in this position, your core, and your conclusion. Discuss your fit and interest while being humble. This is the perfect opportunity to be authentic, be humble, and be yourself. Keep it professional. So oftentimes you're like, oh, well, I want to share a lot about myself, but how do I keep it professional? It really is having that balance, right? the balance of my professional work along with letting the reader learn more about who I am as a person. Mirror the organization. And so this simply means do your research, look online at their website, try to mirror and mimic the language that they use for the position, for their mission statement, their values, and include those keywords in your resume and your cover letter. So you want to make sure that the reader is like, oh, okay, all right, well, our values are timeliness, being able to work with people. And so it's like, what is the language that you can gather and include that in your cover letter and resume? And finally, finish strong and assertive. You want to let them know that you are the perfect candidate for this position and that because of your skills, because of all of the things that you've gone through, that you would be a great candidate, right? So you want to be able to thank them. You want to be able to say, we are looking forward to the next steps or hearing back from you. So you want to start to summarize, you want to start with your introduction, your core, and your conclusion, and where the last paragraph, you want to make sure that the reader knows that you are the best for this position. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about your resume style.
So I'm curious, do any of you know what your resume style is? And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but you can just say yes or no. You can give me a thumbs up. You can type yes or no in the chat.
No.
Nope.
Is it the different templates you could use for it?
Sort of. I'll bring that up. I'll talk about it a little bit.
Mine looks similar to the example that you showed.
I'm sorry, say that again, Cheyenne.
Mine looks similar to the example, the good example that you showed. Mine's kind of similar to that.
Well, then that's a good thing. That means that you have a pretty good format, a good effective resume. All right, I'm seeing a lot of no's. Okay, this is a great, so I asked the question because majority of people don't actually know what the resume style is. I think someone had mentioned a template. A lot of people will go through the web and find a template, or they'll go through Microsoft Office and they'll use a template, but that template really doesn't benefit them. And even that template in and of itself is a specific style. So let's take a look at a few different styles that you can use that will suit your specific need. This first one here is called a skills-based resume. It's a skills-based style. So this is typically for somebody who is more in a technical or labor-based occupation. And the reason being is that individual, if they're in a technical and labor-based position and they've been doing that for years, a lot of times their job history will sound redundant because they've been doing the same thing for so long. And they're using the same skills and the same type of technology, for example. And so what this resume does for that type of individual, rather than having their work history and saying, you know, I was an inspector and I did such and such for Takeda, and I also did it for Delta, and I also did it for such and such company. Rather than having that repetitiveness, they have their skills as the core section of their resume, and that speaks to the employer. Typically, if an employer is looking for somebody who has a technical background or a labor-based background, and I say labor-based, I mean hands-on, it could be in manufacturing, it could be in construction, it could even be in food services. They want to know what are the skills that you have that can apply to the position that you're actually looking at. So it applies to what they're looking for. And so you want to start the resume with those skills. This person also has a summary of qualifications. So within that, they speak to what their accomplishments are, they speak to their certifications, and then they go in depth. They have an in-depth list. I mean, this is probably 10 or 12 bullets of what some of their technical skills are. And then you'll see at the very bottom, I know that it's a really small screenshot, but if you can take a look at the very bottom under the experience, it's just their title, the employer, and their dates. So the major difference between this and the resume that we looked at, the two resumes that we looked at earlier, is that it's not listing bullets and details underneath each position. Rather, the bullets are the core skills, their core technical skills. The experience is just what they did in their work history: title, employer, dates. And then they have their education listed at the bottom. Okay. And let's take a look at another style. So that was for somebody with a technical and labor-based background. This is a functional style. Some of you might have seen this. It's not that common. And I always like to say that this is a great resume, and I'll explain why it's a great resume for someone who might have gaps in their work history for whatever reason. It could be that they were a stay-at-home mom. It could be that they were recently incarcerated and they have gaps in their work history. So they haven't been out in work for a year, 2 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years. And they need to not make the dates the focal point of their resume. So again, if you think back to the resumes that we were looking at, the dates were very clear. And now it sounds like I'm contradicting myself because I said you want to keep your dates clear, have them aligned to the right. But for this person, that could actually hurt them. And again, the resume is subjective, it's personal to you, it's your marketing tool. So it has to benefit you, it has to work for you, it has to suit your needs. And so for this person who might have gaps in their employment history, having their dates be very present and visible is actually not going to be a benefit to them. So what this functional format does is that it allows you, quite similar to the skills-based resume, it allows you to speak to your core skills and competencies and make that the focal point of the resume. So you can see this person has an in-depth summary of qualifications. It's really beefed up. They have a few sentences and they go into their key skills, but then they have this massive list or categories that explains what some of their key skills are in these groups: business management, sales, marketing. It could be somebody who is in hospitality and they want to speak to their customer service skills. They want to speak to their front desk management skills. And they've been doing that. Maybe they've done it through volunteer work. Maybe they've done, you could be an office manager and you're a stay-at-home mom. They could have done it in different groups that they were organizing in the past, but they can't actually list an employer that they've worked for, but they still have these categorical skills. So they have it listed here on the resume in this way. And the other thing that you'll see is, although it doesn't have dates, they say how many years they've been doing this for. So for example, with the stay-at-home mom example, the individual could have been a stay-at-home mom for 18 years. And so they've been a house manager, but they can say office manager for 18 years. They just have to be able to define what that is, what the duties were. Were they balancing, their checkbooks? Who does that anymore? But they could be balancing checkbooks. They're making sure that the home is organized. They're making sure that schedules are organized as well. They're preparing different things. They're preparing meals. They're preparing for the day and the week and the month. And so all those things matter. And that's a conversation that you would have with an employer when it comes into having the actual interview. And that's something that we can discuss with you. But you're gaining skills, and we call these transferable skills, from the other areas of your life, whether it be something that you're doing at home, whether it be something that you do with friends and family, whether it be something that you are acquiring through volunteer activities, mentorship programs, or a program like this, the MBK Career Pathways Program. You're gaining transferable skills that you can list in these massive categories. And then towards the bottom, you're going to see employment history. The person, again, has I know it's really small, they have their job title, the employer, and again, the dates, but the dates are merged in because we don't want it to be the focal point for this person. It's merged in to that list of title and employer. And then education, of course. So those are two, they're very similar, the skills-based and the functional, where the skills are really the focus. And I know when we did that poll earlier, people were talking about skills, and that wasn't a wrong answer. It's true, employers are looking for your skills, but it's really about how you organize it to work in the best way for yourself and for your specific situation. So let's look at a couple more. Yep.
All right, so this is the chronological resume format. So this is pretty much the most common one you're going to see. As you mentioned earlier, obviously, if you're including dates in your professional career history, then you want to include those chronologically to begin with. But the difference with this resume is how much more focus is placed on your career history. So that, unlike the first one where you saw a lot of different skills listed out, this is really focused on an individual's career history, their job titles. As you can see, it's much more in depth in terms of the roles, the responsibilities that they've undertaken at their different positions. And the summary of qualifications is included, and that includes, awards and different aspects and accomplishments of their jobs and things that they had to found useful or things that they were required to accomplish. But this resume really is heavily focused on your professional experience. As you can see, there's not much education listed on here, so that means that this is typically a resume used for people that have a higher number of jobs that they want to include. So, it might be used more for people that are a little older than this group, but, as time goes on, and maybe some of you guys do have a lot of job history that is valuable to, your next position. That's something, this is a resume that'd be a good fit for that moving forward. And, as you get older and gain up more experience. So that's sort of the benefit of this one. And now we'll go to the combination resume. So this is kind of just a blend of the chronological and functional formats. So it gives you a little bit of everything. There's a little bit less emphasis on your professional highlights. There's still a good amount of description in what you're doing, but as you can see, it's clear chronological dates, but there's a breakdown of categorical skills within each experience. And it's just a little bit less, heavy on the step-by-step process that you've gone through for attaining jobs in the past that was included on the chronological resume. And the real benefit of this resume is that it can be used for people that have had maybe career changes, multiple careers, a variety of skills that might not seem directly related, but you can include them all in this type of a resume, in order to really paint the full picture of who you are as a person. And, we think one thing that at the Job Connector we think is really important is to make sure that people understand that, just because they may have sort of unrelated job experience, so that it can't be a reason for including it in a resume that is going for a specific type of job that they think might not have a reason to include that type of experience. We think that, there are transferable skills that might not seem necessarily transferable at first, but I think as Gennady mentioned in one of the previous resumes, there's a lot of things that even if they're not directly in a field of a certain technical field, you can sort of take in and include those things there. So this is a good way to include all that stuff in, different types of occupations, stuff like that.
Awesome. So that was kind of a lot of information. We showed you 4 different resume styles. And as you were looking at them, you might think, my resume kind of looks like that. My resume looks nothing like that. You might be thinking, I actually might need that resume because I want to get into, a technical occupation, a labor-based occupation, or I do have gaps in my resume and I need a functional format, or, I have a lot of upward growth and I want to show upward mobility, so I need the chronological. And that's a conversation I think Ted mentioned that we can have with you. You can set an appointment and we can go through your resume with you and talk about what might be the best format. But one of the things, can a resume, Cheyenne asked a question, can a resume be more than 1 page? Absolutely. A resume can absolutely be more than 1 page. So the first 2 that we show, the skills and the functional, are typically 1 page. And that's because it's only listing key skills and categories of your skills. You're not really getting into too much detail in terms of what you did for each and every single employment within your employment history. But for the chronological and the combo, that's going to run you probably over a page and a half. You don't ever want to go over 2 pages. But for those 2 resumes where you're really going in depth and talking about the details within every single employment history, you're going to go over a page, most likely. And we can go through that with you as well. But really quick, we want to go through what building bold bullets looks like. So we had mentioned that when Hector went through the poll, the action-based statements is what employers are really looking for. So how do we actually build those out? Lucky for us, we have a little cheat code that we can use. If we move on to the next slide, please. And so that's called the PAR method. PAR. So P stands for problem or project, and that is something that you want to state. A stands for action, and R stands for result. So when you're building out your bullets, you want to use this cheat code. You want to keep this cheat code in the back of your mind, this method. And it allows you to just think about what should be within those statements. You're thinking problems. Does anybody remember all the critical thinking activities that we had to do in school? We had to go through all these different critical thinking essays and critical thinking assignments. That's really what that is. Employers want to hire critical thinkers. They want to hire problem solvers. But sometimes we're not dealing with a problem, we're dealing with a project. And in many ways, depending on your occupation, we are all project managers. I say that we're all project managers. We're all dealing with different activities, different projects that we have to think out. We just have to be able to explain them. So you want to have a problem listed or a project within those statements. You want to think about the details, the different steps, the actions that you took within that problem or engaging in that project. And then you want to think about the outcome, the results. You want to show results within your bullets. And that can be shown through numbers, or it could be just shown through how you actually detail the outcome from that situation. I want to give you kind of a quick example because I know you're just looking at these words and thinking, okay, how does this actually work out? I like to give examples from when I used to work at Dunkin' Donuts, and I'll just give a quick story for the sake of time. I remember closing out a shift. I was a night shift leader, and we had a customer come in, and he had asked for a breakfast sandwich with no meat, no cheese, and no bread. So essentially, he was just asking for an, right? I see Jalen's face. He's like, what is that? It's not a breakfast sandwich. He was basically just asking for an egg. And everybody on the floor was like, all right, Gennady, you take the lead on this. You're the shift leader, like handle that. Well, what are we doing with this person? And so I started thinking the first issue is, okay, well, what do I charge this person? If I'm just giving them an egg, I can't just charge them for a breakfast sandwich. And so I had to go through the computer system and figure out what I could charge them for. And I was able to charge them for an add-on. So if somebody wanted, for example, a real breakfast sandwich with an extra egg, that would be a few cents. So I charged them for that add-on. And then the second issue is that I had to figure out, okay, how was I going to serve this? An egg, I don't know if you guys eat Dunkin' Donuts breakfast sandwiches, but it's really flimsy. If you throw it in the bag, it's just going to crumble. So I had to figure out how to cook it in a way that it would stay together and I could actually give it to that person. So I was able to figure out, okay, if I leave it in the tray that it cooks in and put an extra tray on top, I can actually serve it to this individual. And so I'm using all these skills without even thinking about it. Yeah, it seems gross, but they really wanted it. Towards the end, when the person got their egg, they were extremely happy. I actually got a $20 tip that night. And that's the reason why I never forget the story. I got a $20 tip, which is unheard of for Dunkin' Donuts. And so if I was able to add this story, it's a big deal. I was able to use my problem thinking skills, my problem solving skills. I was able to use the technology around me and the resources around me. I wouldn't be able to list that entire story on a resume, but I could parse it out and break it down and summarize what I did. I can say that I was quick and efficient on my feet. I could say that I leveraged the resources around me. I could say in the end, I was able to get high customer satisfaction. And you list that out in your resume without going through the entire story. So we're going to do a little bit of that as well. We have a few minutes that we'll spend. Hector, if you want to lead us through a Jamboard, we can actually practice using this method.
Absolutely. So now we are going to jam it out. We are going to drop a URL to the Jamboard in the chat. So if you can head over, click on the link. It's going to open up a new tab on your web browser. I see Anonymous Kangaroo joined. I love all the different animals that they have for folks when they join anonymously. I didn't know liger was a real animal. And so we are going to use a Jamboard to talk, to put the PAR method into practice, right? And so our example for this position is a sales manager. The problem or project is maintaining customer satisfaction in a fast-paced sales environment of 50+ employees with multiple shifts, right? And so being a sales manager, not only do you have to think about what your deliverables are, but also making sure that everyone on the shift understands what's going on, what are some priorities, dealing with ambiguity, making sure that there is enough shift coverage throughout the day. And so an action in order to support and provide a solution for this problem or project is delegating leadership responsibilities. Results is ensured customer needs were met on each shift. So what does that look like to y'all? Quick question. Have you ever been to a retail store and you've had a great experience? Because anybody tell me about a great experience that they had going to a retail store? Peterson, have you been to a retail store where you had a really great experience, and what did that look like?
I guess one I can think of is probably like Macy's.
Okay, what made it really good?
It was pretty good because the workers were like checking in on me from time to time, and they were nearby. So like every time like I had a question about, let's say, the shoes that they were selling, I was able to go to them, and they were just very friendly, and yeah, they were really organized. And like if they couldn't find anything themselves, they would walkie like a coworker, and then the coworker was able to help them out.
Fantastic. So they had a good sense of communication. They were able to lean on each other and ask each other questions if they didn't know an answer to a question. They were friendly and welcoming, right? They were focused on your needs. They were focused on trying to support you and helping you find what you were looking for. Can somebody else tell me about an experience, a great experience that they had going to a retail store? And what did that look like? How did it feel? All right, how about Samuel? Hey, Samuel, could you tell us about a time that you went to a retail store and you had a really good experience? What did that look like? What did that feel like?
I would say they was into what they was selling.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's the only time I notice a retailer or having a good experience with the retailer is when they're into what they're selling.
Yeah, so they believe in the product, right? They believe in what they're trying to showcase.
Yep.
Absolutely, because excitement and positivity, it's catchy, right? It's addicting. So if you want somebody to believe in what you believe in, you have to be positive, you have to be charismatic, because that energy, right? Everybody wants to hop on that energy and connect to that kind of energy, right? So what about, and this is probably easiest to remember, what is a bad experience that you had in a retail place? Can somebody tell me about a bad experience? What did that look like?
Not a bad experience, but just like, I guess a con is like when you go into a store and an employee is like right on you as you get in. I feel like there has to be a balance. I don't know.
Definitely. It sounds like an overuse of customer service.
Right.
Sometimes you go to a place and they're like super positive, and it's so positive that it's toxic, right? Toxic positivity. What else? Can anybody tell me about a really challenging or bad experience that they had at a retail place? Camille.
Yeah.
What did it look like? If you've had a bad experience at a place, like what did it look like?
a bad experience. I can talk about like a restaurant or something.
Yeah,
Not really.
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes when I go somewhere and make an order, but they don't get it right, and then when I try to like explain it to them, they just try to be like, they tell you to wait for like a certain amount of time, you're still waiting for like 15 minutes or something like that. Just bad customer service.
Definitely, right? It feels like they don't even want to be there.
I don't really blame them, but yeah.
Definitely. And it's interesting. I think oftentimes folks think that retail or the food industry isn't a good place to gain really great skills. It's really all how you look at it, right? From what perspective and lens are you taking that experience? Oftentimes we think, well, I can only do retail or I can only do the food industry because I don't have that experience. But in retail and the food industry, you can learn timeliness, you can learn how to deal with ambiguity, you can learn about organizational savvy, right? You can learn about providing amazing customer service and what does that look like, right? So that it's authentic, that there's no overuse, so that people feel like they keep coming back, right? So I agree with Jordan. Every time I go into Foot Locker, it's a hit or miss experience, and more miss than hit, right? You always when I go into Foot Locker, I love talking about sneakers. I have a giant sneaker collection, and so I feel like I share. Yeah, 9 out of 10 is definitely a miss. I feel like sharing what I'm passionate about, and oftentimes they don't want to share what they're passionate about. They just kind of want to get you in and out the door, right? And that's not part of the experience that you want to share, right? It could be an experience where you're in the financial industry or food industry, or you're dealing with a community organization. It really all should be around customer service focus, right? Demetrius talked about people who don't know the parts of the store or who own their company, right? I agree, definitely. Folks who there's gaps in the knowledge of their information. And so with this one, with the sales manager, the final statement is we ensure that customer needs were met on every shift by delegating leadership responsibility among staff of 50 plus employees, right? And so by being a sales manager, yes, you have to have a positive attitude with your employees along with customers. You want to delegate tasks effectively and efficiently so that you're using your communication skills and you're focusing on meeting the needs of the customers. It's like, what is the best party that you've ever been to? And why do you keep coming back? I agree. Sometimes at McDonald's, you ask for something extra and they're getting upset because now they got to do extra work. And oftentimes it's like, all right, you don't necessarily have to be there, but you don't want to be there, but you don't have to express it and show it. Let's head over to the next piece of the Jamboard, the next example. So now that we have a really great understanding, all right, what are some problems or projects when it comes to being a real estate agent?
Trying to find a buyer.
Yes. Okay. What else?
Finding a property, just finding what you're just gonna buy or invest in.
Fantastic. Yep. So finding a property to showcase.
Capital, aka funds.
Yes. Where are you getting those funds? Definitely. All right. And what is an action that we can take that will help us solve the problem of trying to find a buyer? What is something actionable that we can do?
Marketing.
Research.
Yeah, marketing, advertising.
Yep. Fantastic. Research and marketing. Yep. What about finding a property to showcase? Ooh, referrals. Fantastic. That's a great one. Because if you're a real estate agent, your customer service and the experience that your client has will help you get your next gig, will help you get your next buyer and potential client. What else? What is another action that we can take to help us solve trying to find a buyer, finding a property to showcase, or finding capital? Where are you going to get capital for all that? Loans from the bank. Yep. Ooh, leverage your network. That's right. Building a relationship with a loan officer.
Hit up Uncle Ty.
Absolutely. Right now, that's definitely going in here.
Facts, P.
He definitely got funds. And what do the results look like, right? What do they look like? What does the end product look like? Once you've done your research, your marketing, you've got some referrals because you've leveraged on your network and you've built relationship with loan officers, neighbors, friends, closing the deal. Definitely, that's super important. But what does it look like? What does closing the deal look like?
A signed contract.
A signed contract. Yes. What else?
And money in your pocket.
It's not real until the money's in the bank account. Well, what else, right? If you are the buyer, what does that look like to you?
A new property.
Yes.
In the home.
Yes, definitely. I like that. Right? As you've done your research, you've connected with your referrals, and at the end, you are handing over the keys to someone's new home, right? So because you've done the work, you've provided all these amazing customer service skills, you've provided all these connections, you are now giving somebody the opportunity to create a home, right? Like that picture that oftentimes people take when they're holding up the for sale sign and now it says sold, or they're showing off their keys to the brand new house, right? Like that's the end goal. But I think oftentimes folks miss out on what the end goal looks like because they haven't done their research, right? They haven't really figured out what are some of the problems or projects that they really are going to face and some of the challenges. They haven't leveraged their network. They haven't hit up Uncle Ty for funds or advice, right? And so part of this exercise was to kind of get you excited into thinking, okay, and challenge you to think of what are the things and challenges and problems that we might face in different roles? What are some action steps that we can take them and think of the results, right? Once we've done all this work, what are the results actually going to look like? Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say how impressed I am with this group with their real estate knowledge. I think we thought about throwing up this example occupation because we knew that so many of you were thinking about real estate and that you're so enthusiastic about it. But seeing it come to life and seeing how you're able to think about the problems, the actions, and the results is just mind blowing to me. It's really impressive.
Definitely. I mean, and part of all these exercises are so that you can take them and then implement them in your work, in your life, in your personal and professional, right? You are going to get out what you put in. And I know it sounds cliche, but the more work you do to build a foundation for your brand, for your professionalism, you will definitely see the results in the long run. All right. Do we have any questions before we wrap up? If not, that's okay. You can always email us, call us, request an appointment to chat with us. And we are going to take 5 minutes, a 5-minute break before we start our next session. So we are going to come back at 6:40. So go ahead, get a drink of water, mute yourselves, stretch, and we'll be back at 6:40.